But let me tell you something about the nature of tears. They lift you up and they fill up that river so that you can sail on to a different journey and find a different destiny that's so much more beautiful than where you were stuck. We get stuck in the bedrock of our repression, of the things that are binding us and shackling us to that pain, to that unfairness. So don't be afraid to let the tears come. Don't be afraid to show up for your younger self, because that is literally how you'll feel so much better quickly. Today, I wanted to address a question that comes to me quite often. People want to know, how do you heal complex PTSD? I am not a psychotherapist. I want to make that very clear. I'm using terms that psychotherapists use, but I am not a professional psychotherapist. I am a person who has gone through a lot of my own trauma, and I didn't have the money to ever go see professionals when I was trying to figure out how to survive throughout my adulthood. I am a person who had to figure out how to live on my own, how to heal myself, how to really develop coping tools, and how to overcome some of the most complex challenges during my lifetime. I've dealt with depression, anxiety, suicidal ideations, suicidal attempts. I have had to overcome loss of very close partners of mine and friends of mine. I've had to learn how to grieve. I have had a lot of experiences in the emotional landscape that I've had to learn how to communicate with, understand, and integrate into my life. Oftentimes we think of healing as the ultimate goal because we want to get past an experience and never have to relive it again, never have to think about it again, kind of almost just make it magically disappear. Much like the body is able to do when we skin a knee. When we see our knee all broken up and bloody, we watch the body encapsulated with a scab and heal it underneath until it eventually vanishes and we forget about the scab ever existing. But the things that we experience in our bodies, our emotions, our hearts, and our minds are not the same. They do not have the capacity to vanish and never to be thought of again. And there's an important reason for that. Our survival depends upon us remembering. It depends on us remembering certain details that were really important for us to remember so that we can stay out of harm's way again. Human survival depends upon adaptive intelligence. And in order to have adaptive intelligence, you have to be taking in stimuli. You have to be processing that stimuli. What are those experiences that are happening to you? How did they happen? What was it that you could have done better? What did you not see? When you process experiences, you're able to record them in your body, in your mind, and you're able to be subconsciously reactive before your conscious even catches up to knowing, oh, that's going to produce danger. So processing your emotions and the experiences of your life, no matter if they're happy, sad, or traumatic, is extremely valuable to us. It helps bring a fullness of intelligence to us that becomes intuitive. It becomes instinctual. We're also able to manicure a better outcome by producing better results. So when you think about complex PTSD, try not to think about it as something that you need to heal and get over. Try to think of it as a lifetime journey that you learn to integrate and know how to work with your emotions, your feelings, your memories, and that this is a communication that will get better the more you work with it, the more that you process, the more that you make peace inside of yourself, the more that you realize the benefits of what you've learned. The first step in helping yourself to heal from these traumas is doing your emotional processing work. That means you're going to actually revisit the memories to the best of your ability that have caused you the greatest pain, the greatest feelings of burden, of self-rejection, of anger, of rage, of self-annihilation, anything that might be speaking to you. The key is to be present with the feelings that you feel and the emotions that you feel. to not reject them, to listen to them, to feel them, because you've spent a lifetime ignoring them, repressing them, and not acknowledging them. The way that I processed my emotions was to tune into the memories that had the strongest, most difficult pain to bear in my body and in my heart. And I wrote each story out, all the details I could remember, without stopping, without judging. I just wrote the whole thing out as I remember. That allows you to get it out of your body and actually see yourself from a compassionate, loving angle. Because this will help you to show up for yourself as a big sister, as a big brother, as someone who's in the seat now to change how that child within you feels, as someone who can actually nurture yourself and make different decisions to protect you and the child that's inside. And it's important to acknowledge that there's a piece of us that's been locked away because we haven't acknowledged these pains. We haven't been allowed to cry. We haven't been allowed to grieve at any level. We haven't been allowed to express our anger. We haven't been allowed to express that it doesn't feel right. It felt unjust. And so really connecting to that part of yourself and allowing your feelings and emotions to be felt is a very freeing and important step. A lot of people are afraid to do this because they are so terrified of what they're gonna remember or what's gonna come out. And I just want to tell you that it's actually a really immediate relief once you get it out of yourself and you write it out. It's like a huge weight has been lifted off of you. And the tears may come, and they probably will. But let me tell you something about the nature of tears. They lift you up and they fill up that river so that you can sail on to a different journey and find a different destiny that's so much more beautiful than where you were stuck. We get stuck in the bedrock of our repression, of the things that are binding us and shackling us to that pain, to that unfairness. So don't be afraid to let the tears come. Don't be afraid to show up for your younger self and to write out those stories and emancipate yourself, because that is literally how you'll feel so much better quickly. It's so important to allow yourself to acknowledge the pain that you feel, acknowledge how things went down, because you will have a totally different perspective once you start seeing all of the plethora of the experiences that you went through and how you survived that. And you'll also gain insight that's really valuable to you, because these people who did this to you, or the person that did this to you, may still be involved somehow in your life. And you'll be able to look at that from a different angle and determine what makes sense, what actually seems fair, if there's something that really needs to be dealt with, and if they should even be around your children. There's a lot of stuff here for you to do to help unbind yourself spiritually from these attachments that are holding you back from reaching your highest spiritual potential. Step 2 is going to be to learn to recognize your emotional responses and triggers. What is it that causes you to have emotional or behavioral responses? That is important so that you can set up boundaries for yourself. The third step is to be aware of your inner communications and your inner critic. A lot of us have ingested negative communication, toxic communication. We can create a negative self-communication inside of ourselves when people speak negatively to us, when they hurt us physically, when they reject us, they abandon us, they treat us as not good enough. So it's important to be aware of what you're experiencing in your inner critic and communication, and begin observing that inner dialogue that goes on in your brain. What is it saying? And it'd be good to start a journal cataloging the things that it says. Write down a list of these criticisms that are happening automatically in your brain, and then take a second column and then ask yourself, ask your heart, do I really feel that way about myself? how do I feel about this statement? And write your answer beside of it in the column on the right. And you can begin reprogramming your feelings and your inner communication with yourself. You can begin saying, I don't feel this way about myself, so I'm going to say something that really counteracts what this voice is telling me and creates an opening for more self-love, better self-esteem, and the ability to feel good about myself. You want to adapt towards empowering, loving communications inside of yourself and positive thoughts about yourself. And if those intrusive post-traumatic thoughts come in, if those toxic inner critic thoughts come in, remember your list. Remember that you have disagreed, that you don't agree with those negative thoughts any longer, and override that with what you really feel about yourself. You will have memories come up. You will have that inner critic who wants to tear you down. It's a process of retraining those things, retraining those memories to diminish over time because you've already processed them. You've already seen them from an objective lens. You already know that you are going to do your life differently, that you have made peace with the fact that these things have happened and they've taught you something, and you are never going to let them happen to you again. And you have an inner critic that you no longer listen to because that's not you at all. That was the experience that happened to you, but it had nothing to do with you. And so you reprogram that inner critic with your own truth. You tune into how you feel about yourself, what you want to say to yourself. If you have to remind yourself visually, put love notes everywhere for yourself. Write reminders in your calendar. Whatever you need to do to remind yourself of how beautiful you are and how special you are and why you're so important, then do that. That's a really important step in recovery. When we go through a lot of trauma, we develop a pain body. And it's important to become aware of how you feel emotionally and how that might be affecting your physical body. Whether you're feeling fatigue, whether you're feeling bruised, whether you might have certain pains in certain places, and really begin to work with stretching, breathing, and meditating that bring good chi flow into the body, your life force energy that can flow freely through the body. When we go through trauma emotionally, we contract our bodies, we roll our shoulders forward, we kind of hold everything protected around our abdomen. And our bodies need to be reminded that we're no longer in danger and that we are now in a state where we can let go and trust. And in order to do that, we need to take deep breaths, allow ourselves to feel pleasant in our body, allow ourselves to roll our shoulders back, to do those hip stretches, to get those spinal elongation stretches, and to really remember that this body needs breath, it needs chi flow, it needs care. So allowing yourself to really embody a higher vibrational state and how you breathe into your body and breathe love through your heart and let it radiate through your body is a big part of healing. Number 5 is exposure exercises to help you rebuild trust in your psyche and in your physical memory so that you can move on from the past experiences that are still in your neurological system and memory. That can be really important if you're a person going through panic attacks as well. I'll give you an example of something that I went through. I lost my fiance suddenly. It was extremely traumatic, and I was having severe panic attacks anytime I would pass a landmark of a place we had been, or if I would hear a song that was a song that we would always sing or play together, then I would immediately start having a panic attack. In the beginning of my grief process, there was no way I could have done exposure exercises because it was just too overwhelming. I was in too much suicidal ideation and just barely surviving his loss. After about 3 years, I said to myself, it is time to start pushing yourself through these panic attacks. You have to figure out something. And so when the days came that I felt strong and I would be on the highway or something, driving in my car, and like one of the music tracks would come on, typically I would switch it right away and I would just breathe through it. But I decided, you know what? You have to listen to this music. Let that big heaviness in your chest come up and let it come out and cry. And even though I didn't want to, there was this part of me that was like, no, like, I don't want to do this. I know I needed to. Like, my mind was rational enough to say, it's time. If you're going to have a life and you're going to be healthy, then you're going to need to do this. And so I gave in to what the wisdom in me knew to do. And I would listen to these songs and cry, and then sometimes laugh, because I would be like, I love you so much. I would be talking to him in heaven and telling him how much fun we had on those days and how much I loved him. It was an unusual, difficult experience, but I will say this. I was able to push myself through these experiences, I would say within a few months' time, because I really embraced the commitment to let go of the protection that I was holding in and just let the tears flow, let it all come out. And that is what it means to expose yourself to experiences that are difficult and really work through that emotionally. Now, if you've had some sort of really difficult trauma that was like some of the most terrible things that can happen to a person, then I would be cautious to do that on your own. I would seek the advice of a professional who can carefully help you through that. Or I would do it in a safe way where you're doing that through the writing exercises and you're allowing yourself to not fully immerse experientially in it, but like purge it out of your body when you're exercising, your writing, processing. The reason that it's important to do this is so that you can reprogram your neurological system and help it to understand that that experience is in the past and we no longer need to live it as if it's happening to us right now. That is an important part of retraining the body to go beyond the trauma. Number 6 is really important, and that would be building trusted relationships with others. It's important that you have at least one person that you can really trust to talk to about what you're processing. For me, I was blessed with a miracle, my husband. Sometime I'll tell you about this story, but God put him into my life after all these people had passed away and I found myself struggling to survive. And he was the person that came along who allowed me to, for the first time in my life, start processing the experiences of my life and heal. Even though he didn't understand what I was going through, he was very compassionate to the process I was undergoing and very supportive. It's so important that you have someone that you can go to that is able to listen to you when you need to talk to someone about what you've been through. There's a really important part of us that needs almost like a witness, someone who acknowledges this happened to you and it should have never happened to you. Just by being with you and listening, you feel so much better knowing that you're able to no longer have a secret. It's like when we go through these traumas, we usually go through them alone and no one ever knows about them. And sometimes that's the thing that causes the most trauma and the most pain, because we're bearing this all alone and no one ever knew how really difficult it was for us. So to have somebody acknowledge that and be there for you and love you through that is God's greatest gift to you. If you have a friend, if you have a husband, a wife, a partner that can be someone that you can talk to about things. And it may be important for you to have a conversation with them and tell them what you need. Say, I'm going through this emotional processing because I really want to feel better from this heavy, weighted, depressive experience that is always around me in my life. And all I need from you is understanding. I just need someone to listen, to care, to hug me, to be there for me. Would you be interested in helping me process? And give them that opportunity to say, yes, I'm comfortable with that. Because when you see that they care enough and they are comfortable and they're committed, that will be so healing for you to realize this person really does care about you. And it also will serve as an opportunity for them to say, maybe there's something that I'd like to deal with too in my life that I haven't felt the courage to. And now they can also use your friendship to help support them in their growth journey. This type of friendship is the highest order of love. Someone who will love you and be beside you in the things that are your deepest secrets and most difficult things to bear. But I promise you this, when you are able to do this together, the bond that you grow with is so much greater than in anything else you could have ever bonded through. It's amazing to feel loved and cared for by someone who's willing to bear witness to the most difficult things that you've ever been through. And in the end, they get to know you in a way and know how to support you and know how to set up protections and know how to understand when things might overwhelm you or things might trigger you. Over time, that relationship can evolve into a much more meaningful friendship between the two of you. I'd like to say thank you so much to my beautiful husband for everything you've given me. If you had never come along, I don't think I would have been able to be as healed and as whole and really happy in the way that I am today. And if you don't have a partner that you can do this with or a friend that you can do this with, there are support groups you could reach out to. Whatever it is that you've survived, look for support groups because there are others who know how to support you and know exactly what you're feeling. Number 7 is remove harmful coping mechanisms. It's really important that you remove anything toxic out of your life. Stop the use of alcohol, drugs, emotional eating, impulsive shopping, sex addiction, anything you're doing to numb yourself out or cope with the trauma. You want to stop doing that because you want to start creating this inner communication with yourself of deep love and affinity for yourself and only put in good things that really help make you whole again. And this includes not making yourself available for toxic conversations with people who hold a lot of negativity or trauma in themselves, people who are looking to cause problems or drama, people who bond over negativity. You're going to want to make yourself unavailable to people like that. Number 8 involves creating a healthy, active lifestyle for yourself. Really looking at your life, analyzing it from the angle of what can give me the most vibrant, happy, joyous life. You want to create healthy ways to have positive experiences that nurture you. You want to include relaxation techniques like massage, yoga, breathing, any sort of exercise that helps you to feel whole, that makes you feel more vibrant. You want to analyze the food that you're putting in your body. You want to make sure you're getting enough fresh fruit, that you're getting enough water, that you're really putting things in your body that give you the best outcome for the highest vibrant living. Another thing that's really great is to spend time with animals. Animals have such a way of bringing us back to our inner self, the self that feels so much love and affection. Loving on an animal is like the best thing in the whole world. So if you don't have an animal, I highly recommend you adopt one. And if you cannot have an animal where you live, then it's a good idea to go volunteer at an animal shelter where you can do things with the animals to help out. There's so many animals that need love in this world, and so do you. let an animal bring you back to good health and remind you of what's really important about you inside of yourself. Because an animal can pick up on your emotional truth. You will want to bring out the best part of your spirit when you're with an animal, because that animal naturally will match that vibrational state. So let animals be there for you in your life. Number 9, I think is really important. I recommend developing positive social connections with your community around you. Make sure the community around you that you invest in is positive for your healthy lifestyle and growth. And that you don't go in there to create a new identity for yourself, but rather you go in there to share time and to participate in being pro-social with other people. I think that it's really a great idea to do volunteer work in communities, because sometimes when it's not about individuals, there is a better chance at actually getting to know the more positive side of people. If, let's say, you join a horse rescue and you're in there helping the horses, then it's not really that much pressure on you to divulge all these things you may not be comfortable talking about yet. And it's more about the horses or the animals or whatever it is that you're doing in volunteer work. Maybe you're helping the elderly people. But allow yourself to engage in your community in a way that helps you build your self-esteem and see a different part of yourself that is totally different than what your mind and your memories show you about your trauma. It's important to understand that as you take a healing journey throughout the course of your life, if you feel emotional sadness, if you feel depression, if you just feel general malaise, let yourself feel these things. It's okay. You haven't had a lot of time to acknowledge that stuff. A lot of times we are pushing it out of our psyche. We are struggling through it. We're ashamed to admit it. We're hiding it in secret. And it's like this huge cloud that just takes over our lives. But when you look at it and you acknowledge it and you're like, oh, I feel really heavy today. I feel sad. I feel depressed. I don't know why. I just feel this way. Acknowledge it. Just say, it's okay. That's okay. If I feel that way, that's okay. I love myself no matter what. It'll pass. And you'll find that it passes more quickly. It's something that will be with you. It might just be a residual experience that is coming and going, but learning to be with your feelings and your emotions and not have to repress them or hide them or feel ashamed of them is really important. Just know that some days are cloudy and some days are sunny, and the entire landscape is what it is. You just learn to deal with that. I feel like there's a benefit sometimes, because when I get my depressed days that come through, even though I don't feel my best, I feel yucky, everything feels really hard to do. Those are the days when I tell myself, you know what, that's okay. Take it easy on yourself. Today's the day of rest. Today's the day of you doing what you want to do in freedom of rest. And that's okay. And then if tomorrow comes and I have more energy and the sun is out inside of myself, then that's great too. And now it's about creation and what is it that you want to do at this time. Learn to be with what is and accept what is. And you'll see that life is much like nature. There are storms that come and there are beautiful days and the dolphins jumping in the ocean and amazing opportunities. It all coexists, and our inner world is that way too. So learn to see your inner world as the ocean, the sky, the animals, the everything that you see in nature is in us too. And just be in acceptance of them. If there's something to learn from it. If there's something to communicate with inside, communicate with it. Acknowledge it. Love it. And when it's time to let it go, do that. I hope this has helped you. If you have any other questions about what you're dealing with or you need more specific insight, please leave that in the comment section below, or you can email me and I'll leave my email address in the description box below. I love you all so much. Be well.